Into this whiskey as soon as possible. So welcome everyone to tonight's very special break-even tasting for M&H Distillery. We're being joined by Tal Chotiner tonight in Israel, who's on the ground living and breathing this whiskey. And of course, it's even more exciting to have this tasting in light of their win at the World Whisky Awards earlier this year for Best Single Malt with their Sherry Cask release. David and I were there. It was so exciting, and I think it was the first time I've ever seen David go full pageant mom at the side of the stage, taking photos. I was like, where's the love for me? I think nobody else in that room existed to him at that moment. It was beautiful. But before we hear from Tal about the challenges and unique aspects of making whiskey in Israel, just housekeeping to go over. We recommend having 6 glasses, so you can go back and taste each one and compare them. If you've got the glassware for it, if you don't, that's totally fine. As usual, please don't drive afterwards. Not all of them are crazy cask strength, but we obviously want to encourage responsible drinking. All of our tastings are recorded as well for those who want to watch them back, or for anyone who can't make it tonight. And if you have any questions or tasting notes, please pop them in the chat. We are a big group tonight, and I will try and do my best to get answers for as many questions as possible. And I love seeing what you guys are tasting and what your favorite vibes of the night are. We'll run a poll at the end to see what the pick is. So, I'm very, very excited to see what the favorite is and to see if, the sherry comes out on top. I know for me it usually does. But yeah, without further ado, I might introduce the wonderful Tal to take us through the first distillery in Israel, whiskey distillery.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Actually, it's noon now. Here in Israel, we just had the first rain of the season, even though it's around 30 degrees outside at the moment. And we call it autumn. It's not even summer now. And if you look at this kind of weather and the atmosphere around this country, no one actually thought about opening whiskey distillery because there's no tradition of whiskey making in Israel. Of course, there were a lot of distillation over the years in the history, and actually distillation was invented in this area originally for cosmetic reasons and all kinds of cosmetics and medicines and stuff like that, because alcohol is a good you can dissolve a lot of colors and other products inside. It was actually, alcohol is actually an Arabic word, and the problem is, I think, if everyone were drinking here in the Middle East, probably it would be a nicer place and a calmer place to live in. So think about our weather, no history of distillation of a single malt whiskey. And then if you met Israelis, you probably know what I'm talking about. We are probably the most impatient nation in the world. If you walk in the street in Tel Aviv, someone's going to honk the horn. Something is going to happen. We don't have patience. You have to see a queue in Israel. It never goes straight. Someone is going to try to go from the side. So how can you make a whiskey in a very non-traditional country and with this kind of weather, which is probably the opposite of Scotland, and of course with the impatientness? And we decided to follow the Scottish regulation. That means we had to wait for 3 years minimum. 3 years in the Middle East, it's like dog's years. It's everything can happen in 3 years here. So basically, it's a group of people from high tech, all kinds of startups. This is a startup nation here. That actually they blame me. I used to work for Diageo. I was conducting a whiskey tasting with a kilt in the Israeli summer. Not the best experience. And then doing that, those guys just fell in love with whiskey. They called me. They said, we want to open the first Israeli whiskey distillery. And of course, I told them, don't do it. It's pretty stupid. No one's going to drink an Israeli whiskey. And but they wanted to be the first. They wanted to be pioneers, and the whole story started from there. But then, between two Jews, I think you have 7 opinions. So we were talking about it. But no one actually knew what to do. So we called one guy, the late Dr. Jim Swan. He passed away, I think, 7 years ago this year. So he was a very well-known master distiller and a consultant. But for a lot of distilleries, but I think for us, what applied was that he was the guy behind Kavalan and Amrut. That means hot climate distillation, hot climate maturation. It's a bit different. You have totally different climate in Taiwan and in India, especially in Bangalore, than in Tel Aviv. But again, it's different. We called the guy, he came here, he fell in love, and this is when we started to design and build a distillery. And the first whiskey we're going to taste is something that we worked with Dr. Jim Swan on. It's called the Classic. And I think let's taste this one. And when we blended this whiskey, the first time we blended it, of course, when Dr. Swan passed away, we didn't have a 3-year-old whiskey. We launched only one cask. It was the end of 2017. We had only one cask that was actually distilled outside from the distillery because we were just in constructions. But this whiskey was something that we really wanted to make as a house style, as our opening whiskey. We call it a table whiskey. That for us, Tomer is the head distiller. He said that you put it on the table, everyone can relate to this whiskey. Even if you like peated whiskeys, you like sherry whiskeys, you like whatever. This is something that everyone can enjoy. And we call it a table whiskey. If you put it on the table and watch a game of football, only the table is going to last because the whiskey is really very, very drinkable. It's a combination of around 80% of ex-bourbon casks. We really like our spirit with ex-bourbon casks. For I don't know, like the white canvas for us, it's a great combination. I really like the single cask ex-bourbons, and then 15 to 16% of the cask we call STR. STR was developed by Dr. Jim Swan for Kavalan originally. If you know Kavalan Vino Barrique, it's an STR. That means it's an old red wine cask that was shaped as toasted with heat and then recharred with fire. That means that it's kind of got some crocodile skin inside, and with our climate, when it's hot, the cask is spreading, the liquid goes deeper inside the steaks. It takes a lot of tannins, spiciness, and some fruitiness. So here it's just to season the blend. If you tasted the single cask SDR, it's a very powerful one. Here we're just kind of seasoning it, and just a few drops of new oak, virgin oak, which again with our climate sometimes getting to be more and more tannic and very powerful. Sometimes it's after 3 years it looks almost black, but here it just gives a little bit of, it's kind of connecting the rest of the blend and maybe gives it a little bit of depth. So 46% alcohol. All of our products is minimum 46% because we don't chill filter. None of our products is chill filtered, basically because we don't have the machinery. We don't want to do that. We want to keep the whiskeys as close as they can be to the original cask strain. So 46, no color additives, nothing. We don't need that. We have suntan, so it's sunny everywhere. So I think that we call that whiskey that we actually made it, but it was matured by the sun. This whiskey was launched the first time at the beginning of 2020. The worst timing in the world to launch any new product. I think we launched it in Amsterdam, Paris, came back to Israel, started wearing masks, and then COVID kicked in. And for us as an impatient nation, wait for 3 years to have your first whiskey and then everything is shut down. It was a pretty challenging time. By the end of that year, 2020, this was picked to be one of the world's best 20 whiskeys from Whiskey Advocate, the American magazine. So it gave us a little bit of a boost because, everyone was drinking more during COVID, but you drank something you actually already knew. You didn't try a whiskey from Tel Aviv. You probably bought a Scottish single malt or something you already knew. So enjoy it, guys. I'll pour myself one.
I love that it's, we don't chill filter because we don't have the equipment. So it's a good excuse for being frugal, right? Have you ever had any issues though with, because I know that even if whiskeys aren't chill filtered, have you ever had any issues with flocking before in any of the batches?
Excuse me, with what?
with like any kind of like sedimentation or oils or anything like that? Because obviously you export to a lot of different climates. Have you ever had any issues?
Yeah, and it's not only because it's 46, it's because we filter it and bottle it in hot climate and then sending it to cold climate. So yeah, we had some problems either in Scandinavia or Poland or one of those. It was a very, very cold weather and we got some sediments inside, but it's it's a part of it, it's a part of the original whiskey. So it was a little bit of a problem with those people that didn't know what's happening. But yeah, it happened with the higher ABVs as well. So
Yeah.
we didn't want to kill the whiskey. We wanted to get as much closer to the original taste.
Yeah, amazing. Please pop your tasting notes through the chat, guys. I'm really excited to hear it. I actually got to try one of the early releases of the Milk and Honey Classic. I remember it came into the bar I was working at, and I think it was one of the first before it even properly launched in Australia. And I was like, this is probably the most exciting New World distillery first release, because I tried a lot of like brand new distilleries and I was like, well, it's a bit rough, give them some time. But I remember liking the Classic right away and being like, they have a really solid foundation to build on. But yeah, I really get such like that fruitiness really comes through, but it's like hard to
So for
describe.
me, I think
Yeah.
it's got very nice texture to it, even though it's like probably around 3.5 to 4 year old. That's it. We're getting into 4, but the texture is something that um, you get a lot from the bourbon casks, but it's a little bit because the way we distill. So it's not only hot climate maturation, it's hot climate distillation as well. So just think about, before we talk about distillation, just think about maturation. So in Scotland, you talk about 1.5 to 2% angel share a year. It's cold climate, usually it's consistent. Here in Tel Aviv, the Mediterranean beach is 5 minutes walk this way. That means that most of the summer, we actually don't need a weather forecast. It's the same. It's hot and humid. So it's something around probably 35, between 32 to even 40 sometimes, but 32 to 36, this is like a consistent, and with very high humidity around between 75 to let's say 90 sometimes. That means that a cask is aging, and because we follow the Scottish regulations, there's no climate control in the warehouses. So when the cask is aging, in the summer, it's hot, spreads, the liquid goes deeper inside the staves, extract a lot of tannins, colors, tastes, and whatever. And then there's so much water in the air because of the high humidity that the angel share is going to be mostly ABV. So we're going to lose more alcohol and less water. That means that the ABV is actually going down during summertime, just a little bit. And then winters, even if it's raining, it's dry. And when it's dry and cool, it shrinks a little bit. I think probably the coldest night in Tel Aviv will be at one point of the year, something like 5 degrees plus Celsius. But it's dry and it shrinks a little bit. The liquid goes out of the wood and then you lose more water because it's dry. So ABV goes up. So casks are spreading and shrinking. Liquid goes into the wood, deeper into wood and out from the wood, and you lose more ABV and you lose more water. It goes like that. So the casks are actually working all the time. And we have 11% angel share yearly. All right. So that means if we thought of producing a whiskey that would be aged for 12 years, probably going to be empty, too much wood effect. And of course, we joke and we say, 12 years in the Middle East, you can never know, you can never expect what's happening, even domestic wise. So it's really working. It's a different kind of maturation. And for that kind of maturation, you still need a little bit different method of distillation as well. That means that we cannot use a lot of the tails, the faints in the tails. Some of the oils there are great when you have a very long time of maturation, or let's say 8 years and up. Some of the scents there are a kind of offsets. Oiliness is great for antioxidation of the cask, but when you have short maturation, you don't need that. And again, some of the offsets are going to get much better during a longer time. But when we age it for 4 or 5 years, they still gonna stay a little bit stinky. So we cannot do that. We have to cut it very high and very short. The heart is between 80 to 70%. That's it. That means that a lot of things there are going to go to the low wine tank and then going to get redistilled in the second batch. But it's very high, very clean, and an average of 73% alcohol. It's like a grappa with the pastry notes, like a cookie dough notes, because of the barley content. So it's very, very sweet and aromatic. And then what we lose at the tails of the oils in the tails, we gain back because two of the line arms of both of the stills are going down at a 45 degrees angle. So there's no reflux, no an additive contact with the copper. So everything that goes up goes straight down to the condenser, and you get like oiliness back. So, and I think you get this in this whiskey, and even in the higher ABVs, just a cask sample at 68% is still very drinkable because there's something there that's kind of coating and rounds the edges of the alcohol.
Yeah, amazing.
Let's have another whiskey.
Yes, I was going to say the tasting notes are great, biscuity, creamy mouthfeel. Simon would be very happy with that on the table as a drinking whiskey. Butterscotch, Anzac biscuit, stone fruit. I get a little bit of mango skins, like Kensington mangoes, when you smell them. Neil's asking if you recommend. Yeah. So Neil is asking if you recommend it neat or with a drop of water before we move on to the sherry cask.
We usually drink it neat, but with it could be nice just to open a little bit with water. But I think it still is very drinkable at 46. And with water, it's going to be sweeter. Usually, it's sweeter. But as the big guy said that they want to sell you their whiskey, drink it anywhere you like it. So we don't recommend you to put some Coke in it. Just drink it and enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly. However you choose to drink it, as long as it's your stuff they're drinking.
Yeah. I think the next one is sherry.
Yes, so this is the award-winning sherry cask. I will let you guys know. I believe David can double confirm, but there is no sherry cask. I think we got a pallet full arrived to Australia and instantly disappeared. So I don't think there's any bottles left, is there?
No, that's they're all gone. There's more planned to be on the way. This is one of the few, and certainly in the last decade or so, World Whisky Award single malt winners that is a core release. Now, very often they're a single cask that once they're gone, they're gone. But this one is constantly in production, and as far as we know, that we're going to at least nail the production team to the floor, and so that they can keep on making it for us.
Yeah.
I'm going to shout. They're just here. They're having coffee here, and I want them to on the bottling line.
Just give them the crack the whip and get them making more sherry. I think it's it's a standing order of a ship full every as soon as it's ready to go. But yeah, no, this is very exciting. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so core range is classic, and then 3 whiskeys we call the Element series, which the target was to make very balanced whiskeys, not a sherry bomb, not a peat monster, not a very winey whiskey, like some of the whiskeys that you get from red wine casks. And so the series is based 50% on the same type of cask as the classic. That means the ex-bourbon, the STR, sometimes the proper virgin oak, depending how old is the STR, because sometimes it could kind of replace the virgin oak. So 50%, and then we add another element. So here we just added 50%. On the 50%, it's split in the middle between Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez, PX Sherry. So that means not a sherry bomb. And I think when I started drinking whiskey, those were the sherry whiskey that were existing back then, not sherry bombs, not overpowering, not and there's a place and a time for everything. But I think for an everyday whiskey, or for just a whiskey to enjoy, sometimes sherry bombs are too much. So we are here based in Tel Aviv, but we decided to be kosher, and it's not really easy to be kosher in Tel Aviv, but we say we have a devil's share called the angels are up in Jerusalem. And for the rabbis to come here, we are very close to the beach. They don't like to come in the summer because there's too much for them to see. And we were looking for a lot of different types of casks. So there's not a problem with producing kosher whiskey because there was no whiskey production during biblical times. That means not a lot of regulations and laws. But wine, there was a lot of wine during biblical time. And when you have to use wine cask or grape-based products cask like cognac, sherry, wine, port, those had to be kosher. So it's not a problem with wines. We have like 380, 400 wineries here in Israel. Most of them are kosher. With cognac, we just source from Godet, from La Rochelle. He has his own kosher line. We bring in beautiful barriques. Port, we have port styles from here. But sherry, there was no kosher sherry in the world. And I think that every little old Jewish lady that dies, there's one less consumer of kosher sherry. So there's not a lot of market for this. So we actually had to make our own seasoning project in Spain, in Jerez. And usually it's like Macallan and the big guys. Our size of distillery is just source cask from brokers. So it started off, they make 55,000 liters of wines for us every year. Actually, this year they're making 80,000 because 3 days after the award, we knew what's going to happen. So we went straight to Spain, guys, you have to double it. So 55,000 liters. Until last year, it was PX and Oloroso, and this year we made some Muscatel and Fino as well. So this is just our spirit in our wine. And if I'm putting the kosher thing aside for a second, the good thing about the seasoning project is that we can actually monitor the quality of the wine and the quality of the casks. So it's a joint venture between a cooperage in Spain, a winery called Bodegas del Pino that makes the wines for us, and a rabbi from Barcelona that goes there a few times a year just to make it kosher. I don't know what he's doing, but it's kosher enough for us, and the wines are great. And this is, I think, why this whiskey actually won. You have to understand that World Whisky Awards for us was crazy because we, as I said, with the first whiskey, we just launched it 3 years ago. And then after 3 years, we won something like that. It started off, I think, with 6,500 different whiskeys. 1,500 from them were single malts from all over the world, with 200 judges from all over the world. And we were nominated for, I think, something like 6 or 7 different awards. And then just think about 4 Israelis and 1 Indian guy that works with us, Shilton, sitting there. And Emma and David can verify it, with suits and ties in a very boring 3.5 hour ceremony of the World Whisky Awards in London. And then we are nominated for something and then we don't win. And there's another one and we don't win. And then eventually we go into the last one, which is, the world's best single malt, like the Oscar. And they open in the screen and you have a 25-year-old Ardbeg and a Glenmorangie Signet and Rosebank 31 and Glenlivet 21 and we're never going to win. And this one that is actually sold in Costco in California, a core range whiskey. In the last 15 years or even more, no core range whiskey won the world best single malt. It was always small batches, single casks, and very special editions. And then all of a sudden we win, and then we were like in the back of the room screaming, and I think we were almost flying to the stage. David just took some photos and shouting and screaming, and then ending up at like 4 o'clock in the morning having shitty pizza and Guinness from a can at the hotel lobby and have to go fly back to Israel. We came back here Friday afternoon, and then we had 3 days, and it was Passover, which we can't work on Passover. The whole world was sold out in 2 days, and we couldn't work. So since then, I think we produced something like 75,000 bottles of sherry, selling it all the time. And it's the first time when I'm 50, I was 52 2 weeks ago. First time I had gray hair because of the sherry. So I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was absolutely crazy. I still remember you saying to me at one point, you're like, I'm so glad it wasn't the single cask. I'm so glad it's the one I have lots of, and more people can try it, which is, and yeah, like you say, there was some insane.
This was the other one that was at the finals. It was the orange wine, very small batch, 859 bottles. Yeah, not this one. So.
Yeah, no, there were some insane, rare, expensive whiskeys, and it was like just, like you said, the bottle you can pick up in Costco in California, you know, that accessible. And I think that was probably the best, is that it gives an opportunity for more people to try and to enjoy something that, you know, has been rated and beloved by judges. But just quickly, I've got a quick question from Troy, or two quick questions from Troy. Where do you source the barley from? And how many times are you guys reusing your casks, especially with the sherry, because you're making it yourself?
So usually we use the casks once, but with sherry and STR, we kind of trying to use them more because they're more powerful. With ex-bourbons, they're usually exhausted after one aging time here in Tel Aviv. We are trying now some refill bourbon casks, ex-bourbon casks at the Dead Sea, because it's more extreme. Maybe we'll get more taste out of a cask that here will get you nothing. Barley, at the moment, we're sourcing most of our barley from UK. The barley in Israel, first of all, there's not enough space. We're using 10 tons every week, so there's not enough space in Israel to grow so much barley. But the barley in Israel it's a variety that was targeted for animal feed, so it's got more fibers inside and less starch content that we can actually turn into fermentable sugars. But we have a plan of trying to grow our own barley. It's probably not going to be for the whole production, but we're going to have our own malting and our own probably. Oh, this is the screen. The screen. This is Dana, the marketing manager. Tomer is the distiller, and then me here, and Gal and Shilton. So yeah, everyone's just hugging and shouting on the stage. So we're going to have our own probably local barley, but this week last week we just launched. There was a whiskey live in Tel Aviv, so we have few casks of local barley that we actually tried. It was very small and very hard shell. So this is our local barley, only 800 bottles. So we just launched it at our whiskey live, but it's totally different. But we're going to have it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's so interesting to see. And I think, you know, I'm curious to see if maybe we can swindle a bottle for Australia to see what it's like. Maybe we should do a tasting, David, of different world whiskies made with the barley from those countries. That would be pretty cool.
We are actually working with one of the universities. The land of Israel, the country of Israel, was the first to cultivate wheat and barley in the human history. And they found the DNA of the original barley. So we're trying to see, maybe we'll use a 5,000-year-old barley or whatever. So we'll see.
That would be freaking cool. That would be insanely cool. People enjoying this are easy drinking, cherries and dark chocolate, orange peel. I definitely get that orange peel, Leo. Raisin sultanas, smooth chocolate mousse finish. Michael, the sherry note doesn't overpower the ex-bourbon either. You still get a little bit of that on the nose and palate. Yeah, absolutely. Like Tal was saying, it's not a sherry bomb. It's not designed to, you know, be massively saccharine and sweet and big, and you know, you feel like you're a diabetic after you drink it. But yeah. Shall we?
We can do that. I mean, with just a single cask, leave it over the summer. It's going to be very chewy, sweet PX, like a sherry bomb. But for this, and we might do that as a single cask or sometimes as a small batch. But for this series, really, the target was to make very balanced whiskey. So you get it in the sherry, it's like old style sherries. And I don't know, but probably in a blind tasting with crazy whiskeys from all over the world, this was what won the balance thing. So I think so. I don't know.
Yeah, we may never know. All we know is that it did win. So yeah. Shall we move on to the Elements red wine cask, the second of the Element series we're trying?
Well, while you're busy pouring that, Tal, just a question on refill casks. Obviously, you haven't been producing whiskey for that long, so you're probably only working with the first fills at the moment. But do you have any refill casks sitting there quietly maturing, and how are they progressing? Is it something that you will work on?
So as I said, with STRs and sherry, yeah, I love second fill STRs. Refill cask for bourbon, we have a bit here, but I think the outcome, even after 8 months in the Dead Sea, is great. So we might find something to do with those refill casks, because Dead Sea and Sea of Galilee is a very big extract. Maybe we'll see. And there's another plan of we'll talk about it when we get to the Dead Sea one. But I think Mountains of Jerusalem, you have less wood effect and less angel share, so we might be able to age it for a longer time. So we'll see what's maybe the balance between the angel share and the wood effect will be great with refill costs, but it's still in you know, we're still studying that. So the second element from the series after the sherry is the red wine casks. And to be honest, Tomer and me, we don't like a lot of too much red wine notes. And I think I was in Australia 2 months ago, and I tasted some beautiful whiskeys that were aged in red wine cask. But when we started to make this whiskey, we tasted not such a good Australian single malt that were aged in red wine casks. And this is what we didn't want to do. We didn't want too much wine effect. We wanted to balance it. And again, this is the APEC, the element series is exactly that. So again, it's 50% of the same type of cask as the classic, and then the rest of the wine cask. And we played with a lot of different wineries and different grape varieties here. And more we are using a winery called Vitkin, which is just half an hour north of Tel Aviv, and 350 liters casks, which is less wood contact, so less wood effect, less wine effect. And the grape variety is Carignan, which is a Mediterranean one. Of course, we have a little bit of other casks, but I think that you get the wine notes, but it's not overwhelming by the wines. It's like step deeper than the classic, but drier than the sherry. And I think I really like that. So it's probably the hardest whiskey for us to make, but I think it's the most complex one from the 4 core range whiskies.
Yeah, people are absolutely loving it on the nose. And look, I mean, red wine cask is so difficult to work with because you got so many tannins up in the air, and especially with a hot climate, that's all whiskey wants to do is pull out tannins. But it's so fruity and sweet still. Like I'm getting like candied kumquats and stuff. Matt's asking, is Israeli wine as good as Israeli whiskey?
There's some beautiful wines here. There's some beautiful wines here, but you know, it depends what you get. It depends. You need to know your stuff. The problem is that usually they export most of the cheap stuff just because of kosher and sacramental reasons. But there's some beautiful wines here.
Yeah. Is there any kind of like styles or varietals of Israeli wine that like, so like I know from California you get Zinfandel wines, which is, you know, quite unique to California. Is there anything kind of similar from Israel?
So it's an old story, because there were original grape varieties from Israel, but then we had the Ottoman Empire here for 600 years, so they actually seized all wine or alcohol production, except from some monasteries. And with the new age, the Baron Rothschild brought back some grape varieties to Israel, which he actually knew what he's doing. His consultants brought some Mediterranean varieties, but I think like 40 years ago, everyone started to plant Cabernet and Merlot, which is not exactly same weather as in Bordeaux. So we have very good like Cabernets and Merlots, but they're heavy. And you see more and more the new style of winemaking is Grenache, Carignan, and all kinds of wines like that, and recultivation of old biblical time varieties like Marawi, Bituni, Jandali, Hamdani, all kinds of names like that. That some of them are actually, you can find them in the Bible. And they even found a vase with grape seeds in one of King David's fortress, and they mapped the DNA starting to plant that. So we'll see, but it's getting to the basics now, and more you see old style grape varieties and some Mediterranean and less Cabernet and Merlot. And I think the revolution now is more white and rosé because it's summer all time. So basically it's better to drink that. But this is a kind of Carignan. So Carignan is southern France, some places in Spain. It grows great here as well. And this is, I think, the spiciness and some herbal notes, and of course the fruitiness, candied fruits, and all kinds of smell like that. And then the finish is kind of you get some tannins, just a little bit on the palate, and it's a dry finish, almost like a red wine.
Yeah, cool. Well, you've obviously done red wine. I think you've done some white wine casks and orange wine, which we know. Are you going to do like a rosé cask or something and live the full white girl summer fantasy?
At the moment, no one ages rosé in Israel, so we'll see.
Fair enough. Fair enough. No, loving this super buttery, nutty, faint maraschino cherry. Good call. Yep, strawberries and rose petals. Floral with drying spice. Leo coming in with the full set of tasting notes there. Nose is amazing. Elegant spiciness. Really good way to describe it, I think. Very cool. Well, shall we? Now, this one will be really interesting. For the next whiskey, the Elements Peated Cask. So is it a peated whiskey or is it a peated cask that the whiskey is matured in?
So we had to keep it complicated. So again, it's based on 50% of the classic. But then when we started, we had some peated barley from the Czech Republic. So we distilled it and it was aging, but we wanted to launch something already. And we didn't have a 3-year-old peated spirit. So what we did, we used some ex-Isla casks, some we sourced casks from Lafroig in Ardbeg, and now actually from Kilchoman next month. But we have, it's amazing because I think that the idea behind using ex-Isla casks happened by mistake in Penderyn, another whiskey distillery that was the first ever job of Dr. Jim Swan as a consultant 20-something years ago. And they were just never wanted to make any peated whiskey, but they sourced a lot of ex-bourbon casks and they just filled it. And 2 of them were, because ex-Isla cask is an ex-bourbon cask that was used in Isla just to age some peated whiskies. So they, all of a sudden, he smelled something, he tasted something, he said, guys, what the hell did you do? We said we're not going to make any peated whiskeys. So by mistake, they discovered this, and we just enjoyed that. Of course, our spirit is much heavier than theirs. So we started with those kind of whiskeys, with peated, with unpeated barley in peated casks, and then now we have even more complicated. So we have unpeated barley in ex-Isla casks and peated barley in ex-bourbon casks. But it's 40 ppm, but it's like sweetwater peat, the barley itself. So you don't get a lot of medicinal notes, iodine, maritime scents. But you get that, some of that you get from the peated cask. But for me, when we did a blind tasting with this whiskey, and I can always recognize that, it's like 3 steps. There's almost no smoke on the nose, almost nothing. Just like very grassy, earthy a little bit, and very fresh, almost citric. And then when you taste it, you get a little bit of brininess. And when you think you're never going to get nothing of smoke notes, like I think 1 second after the finish, after you swallow the whiskey, the smoke is late for the party, but it's coming. So just kind of a smoky finish. So for us, I think that it's a nice gateway for peated whiskeys. It's not a peat monster. We can do that. We have some in the special editions. I think one we did for for the whiskey shows in Australia, the peated barley and STR cask. But this is really, really a balanced one. It's kind of seasoned by peat and not covered by peat.
Yeah, it's so cool. There's one tasting note I always get on this, and it's, you know, when you get those like fancy cucumber sandwiches and they've got cracked black pepper, it's that like black pepper smoky kind of thing with that freshness that comes through from cucumber, and I always feel fancy. I feel like I'm at a tea party when I drink this. It's so good.
You need to drink it with your finger up.
Yeah. Pinky out, right?
But I think what Neil just said here, not a peat fan, but it's a complex and nice whiskey. This was the target, and I think it's just, if you like peat or don't like peat, it's just nice whiskey. Even if you're like you like your Octomore for breakfast, this is still a nice whiskey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Ross says sweet citrus and quite grassy. Leo, the peat on the nose comes through much more readily after you've had a sip or two. Yeah, I think your brain adjusts to it. So it's like, oh, there is smoke in here. Oh, hello. Matt says it's beautiful. Yeah, Cam, high tea in a dram. Peat on the palate's more than the nose. Kai was asking, so the barley's from the Czech Republic, so it's peated Czech Republic barley.
Not anymore. It used to be, not anymore. Now we're using Scottish barley, Scottish peated barley. But it's still not very medicinal.
Okay, cool. And is that, do you know if it's like Highland or Isla peat that that's being used, or it's whatever?
Island.
Yeah, cool. Nice.
Of course, you know us, we experiment with everything. So we have other types of barley, different types of yeast, different type of cutting it, you know. We're gonna play with everything.
Yeah, give it all a crack. And I mean, especially with like such a unique climate, it gives you an excuse to be like, well, we have to try everything. We've got to try everything because, you know, we're already making whiskey in a place where no sane person would think to to put a whiskey distillery right on the water in Tel Aviv. So yeah, I love it. But yeah.
And I think that the weather actually helped the impatientness of ours and the crazy ideas we have. And Tomer and me, we call it the never-ending coffee, because we have coffee in the morning. We never finish the coffee because I have a stupid idea and he has to follow through. And then we go somewhere and try new casks. Or like the orange wine cask. No one actually tried that because orange wine just became to be trendy in the last few years. Of course, we had to do that. And all of the experiments we are doing and the different places of aging whiskey, which we are going to taste one of them, is what got us, I think last year we won Brand Innovator of the Year, and we were just happy they called us a brand. We're pretty happy with that as well.
This is like validation. Hello, see me. I love it. Mark, interesting how it seems to maintain buttery notes while being smoky. Yeah, it's definitely like, it's not dry. Like there's no necessarily dryness to it, but it is still got that, like you're saying, that, you know, viscosity, that oiliness from the spirit comes through. David says it's smoky marshmallow. Rob says it tastes like the duck's nuts, so I'm assuming that's good. Yeah, Leo's keen on Octomore for breakfast. But yeah, but like you were saying, you know,
you never tried it. Like you never tried Octomore for breakfast. It's
I mean, look, it's one way to wake up in the morning, I suppose. You know, rather than with a nice hot coffee, just like a whack to the face of smoke.
If you wake up in a burning hospital, this is probably what breakfast looked like.
Yeah, well, look, anything's better than hospital food, right? But yeah, you were saying how, you know, you've got so much experimentation going on, and we were talking a bit about like local wine types and stuff earlier, which I think kind of leads us into whiskey number 5, the Pomegranate cask. Now, I think these last two are so interesting and so fascinating, and some of the coolest stuff coming out in whiskey that only you guys can do, really.
So I was looking for another part of our Israeli DNA inside the whiskey. So of course, fast maturation and the climate and everything, but something to do with who we are. So there's a winery that makes wines only from pomegranates. Now they actually started to make some wines from grapes, but pomegranate wines. Up in the mountains, it's above 1,000 meters above sea level. They grow their own pomegranate variety, which before the harvest, it's between 1.6 to 2 kilos one fruit, like a little watermelon. And pomegranate is a very Israeli fruit. On every street, you can get a fresh juice. Someone's going to squeeze pomegranate juice. We eat it in salads. This Friday is going to be the Jewish New Year's Eve, Rosh Hashanah, and there's a blessing about the pomegranate seeds. It's kind of embedded in our everyday life, in our diet. And there's a winery that makes those wines. So I had to bring some casks. So we brought like 2 or 3 casks just to see what's happening. And the first cask we actually switched from 1-year-old bourbon cask, and then we stayed 4 months. It wasn't a whiskey back then, 4 months in the pomegranate wine cask. And then I had a meeting in London with an independent bottler. So I brought some samples, and the last second I brought this with me. And I told him, I taste it, but I don't know what's going to happen with that. We're not sure about that yet. I'm landing back in Tel Aviv, opening my phone, and said, definitely the pomegranate. And this is the first time that the boutique whiskey company actually made a boutique malt company. And this is Tel Aviv on the label. And the little swan here is Dr. Jim Swan. But this was 1-year-old pomegranate wine cask spirit. It became to be one of our signatures later on. And this is, I think, the last batch. I think it was the 4th batch we did. It's always small batches between 1,000 to 3,000 bottles. Higher ABV. It's not a cask strength. Cask strength, usually it's around 66 and up. So we just take it down to the strength we like it, and we get the taste we want to share with you guys. And of course, you can always add some water with that. So this is probably the only one in the world that we are the only one that used pomegranate wine cask, and it became a hit. So it's not the core range whiskey. The Apex series is the small batches, sometimes a single cask. But this one and the next one we're going to taste became to be kind of a core range in the non-core range, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you've got your everyday drinkers, and then you've got and now for something completely different, like, that point of intrigue and something very interesting. And yeah, I feel like pomegranates are always associated with the Mediterranean. I mean, like, especially like Greece and Crete and Israel, and yeah, that kind of agricultural trading port countries.
And I think you get, it's almost a chewy whiskey. It's not like you just drink it, you chew this whiskey. And I think we managed to get the pomegranate in the whiskey. So it's sweet and sour. It's a little bit tart, a little bit tannic, but it's sweet and it's nice. We used in this whiskey, it's the first one we did with that was fully matured in pomegranate wine cask. And it mostly were port style, like fortified sweet wine, but from pomegranates. And I love that because usually, to be honest, guys, I'm not crazy about the pomegranate wines. I love their casks. But when you taste the sweet fortified wines, they're nice because they're not very sweet. Pomegranate is sweet, but also if you put a pomegranate syrup in a Coke, it's going to dry the Coke. And this is something is very, really, really special about this kind of fruit and about those kind of wines, and of course, about this whiskey.
We do also highly recommend putting pomegranate syrup in Coca-Cola. There's so many like amazing syrups from the Mediterranean. There's this sour cherry syrup called Vicinava as well. It goes great in Coca-Cola. Like, definitely experiment. Or, like, obviously, if you want to go full gung-ho, you can put this in Coke, but drink it however you like. Rob's got a great question. How much variation have you found from batch to batch in the pomegranate batches?
Well, with this series, we don't try to make it consistent. This is the fun thing about being a craft distillery and having small batches, because it's a pain in the ass to keep consistent with the big batches. Every batch of one of the classic or elements is 15,000 bottles, so those have to be, of course, consistent. With this, we don't care, and they're not consistent, but you get, you know, the backbone of the pomegranate wines and the backbone of the pomegranate cask are there. So some of them were more like dry, but I think most of them are now in this kind of direction. Sometimes, mostly it's going to be a different ABV. So because we taste it, and we're never going to put the same ABV just because the last one was this with the 57 point something. We taste it again, we mix the casks again, and then we'll play. Some of the casks were like rosé wines from pomegranates, but most of them is like those fortified red wine. So it's there, but it's not very consistent. You can feel the difference.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, there's, you guys are saying, Matt's saying there's lots on the nose to explore. It's zesty and orangey. Leo loves it. Like, the best thing about New World whiskies is that you guys aren't constrained by any like purity restrictions. Obviously, you follow a Scottish model, but you know, you can have fun and you can be unique, and you can really put your country's stamp on the whiskey. Rob's saying that he hears pomegranate wine tastes a bit seedy. All applaud for the dad joke. Cranberry tart sweetness. Kai, this one isn't peated at all, but I know what you mean with those like spices coming through and that like.
Yeah, and I think that, Rob was talking about the lack of consistency. There's a batch number here always on the front label. So if you tasted number 14, it's going to be consistent, but the next one could be number 21, because all the apexes are just consistent. They're just, you get, cognac will be something else. So all the numbers are adding up. That C is 19, this was 14. Next time you're gonna get a pomegranate, going to be different, but you're going to see it's not the same batch. So we can play with that, because a small batch is a small batch.
Yeah, no. Ross saying it's chewy, cherries, small drop of water brings out the fruitiness. And yeah, Troy, I agree. Like, it doesn't feel like it's 59.5% ABV. It really hides it so well. Like, you're just getting that fruitiness. You're not getting that like big burn or anything like that. It's just so wonderfully balanced.
I think there's something to do with this kind of wines, with the viscosity of the spirit, and then again coming back to the way we cut it and the way the stills are built, really hides almost 60% alcohol.
Yeah, 100%. This is, I think the pomegranate is probably one of my favorites that you guys do. So are you thinking of doing it again in future and like incorporating it into the Elements series maybe one day?
So yes, but the problem is that at the moment we don't have enough casks. The Element series, it has to be a big one. We did a special edition for Rosh Hashanah. So it was for the Jewish New Year's. Again, it's here somewhere. So this is an Element pomegranate, but it was only just very, very small edition. We're still trying to get some more casks from the winery, but I think that we will try to actually ferment our own pomegranate juice just to season the cask. We'll see that. So we have a lot of crazy ideas, but we really like this outcome, and I think it's different, and it's something to do with our DNA. I wish I could put it in the core range.
Yeah, amazing. Fair enough. Well, hopefully one day, you know, when your crazy experiment takes you down the path of opening your own winery, making bizarre range of wines, and maybe your brewery down the line as well. But yes.
Well, if we make sherry in Spain, we can make pomegranate wine in Israel.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think might be I think the last whiskey that we have is probably the most bizarre and unique and like the story behind this whiskey is just insane. So I'm very excited for you to share it with everyone if they haven't heard it before.
So first visit from Dr. Jim Swan, he came to Israel and we took him out. You know, it's a small country. I think from top to bottom, the northern point to the southern point, it's something like around 450 kilometers. That's it. We are very small, but making a lot of noise. Probably the distillery is like the country. And if you look at the different climate zones we have in one day of driving, it's pretty crazy. And Jim Swan, when he looked at those, he said, guys, you have a playground here. We can actually try to make a whole thing about terroir in whiskey, not only with wines. Let's do that. Because when you drive in Scotland from one end to the other, it's still going to be green, rainy, and a lot of sheep. Here, my office, the distillery here, is 5 minutes from the beach, so it's Mediterranean, humid, and hot climate. 1 hour from here, and we say 3,000 years away, is the city of Jerusalem, which is between 700 and 900 meters above sea level, which actually snows once a year there, and it's dry. And even in August, it's going to be cool nights there, but very dry. And then 1 hour later, you're in minus 430 meters above below sea level at the Dead Sea, which is the lowest place on Earth. Of course, you have the Sea of Galilee in the north, which is humid, but minus 210 meters below sea level. And you got some mountains, and of course you have the desert. Half an hour from the Dead Sea, there's a little city called Arad, which is 600 meters above sea level. Very cool. So why not play with that? So we started with the first ever experiment we did at the Dead Sea. We were trying to get any kind of a little warehouse, but we didn't want to build a warehouse because we didn't know what's going to be the outcome. So we put it on a hotel roof, which was, I can tell you that a few months ago, like a year ago, we took the cask out from the roof and put it in a new warehouse. I don't know who let us put something like 40 casks on the roof of the hotel. No engineer actually, checked it, and I think we almost crashed the hotel with those. But anyway, it's very low and very dry, and you get up to 50-55 degrees in the summer out in the sun, and the warehouse was out in the sun just with a little bit of shade. And the air pressure at minus 400 and something meters actually presses the liquid even deeper inside the wood. And because it's so dry, you lose so much water there, and the ABV goes up to 70 sometimes. When we fill the cask at 64, it goes up to 70. And you have 25% energy share yearly. That means you have a lot of loans in the cask that takes just whatever is there in the air just goes in. Minerals. I don't think it's saltiness, but there's something to do with saltiness in the taste, because the water, it's not ocean spray at the Dead Sea. The water are like something like oily, like a ramen. It's hot, it's oily, it's disgusting. And 38% salt, 10 times more than the Mediterranean. So there's not a lot of waves or spray, but you get something there, because probably the sun is evaporating the sea, the water, and something is going in. There's a lot of minerals, there's a lot of everything in this whiskey. I think it's like an explosive whiskey. The problem with the 25% energy share, we can never do a full maturation at the Dead Sea. It's going to be like chewing a wood, and it's probably going to have maybe 2 shots in every cask. When you get a cask there after like a year, it started to crumble. When taking a bong and opening a cask, you almost take the whole stage with you. So we do 1 to 18 months, 1 year to 18 months there, and we bring the cask over back to Tel Aviv. We always have a twin cask. Everything we take down to the Dead Sea, we have a twin cask, same filling dates, same type of wood. After 3 months, you feel the difference. Only 3 months. You can feel the difference. It's totally different. So we started with that. Now we have a warehouse at the Sea of Galilee. We have a warehouse up in Arad, which is just 30 minutes from the Dead Sea, but with 1 kilometer different. and on the mountains of Jerusalem as well. That was actually snowing at the warehouse last year. But I think this is probably I don't know which batch you have, guys, but I think it's the third batch. And on the bottle, we actually say, why does it cost so much? Because it's 40% angel share. We have very greedy and thirsty Jewish angels back there. And with 11% angel share yearly in Tel Aviv and 25% there, it's around 40 to 50% up to the angels. So when you taste this one, it's 56 or 55. Which one do you have, Emma?
56.2%.
56.2. It's the first one. It's a beautiful whiskey. It's mostly ex-bourbon cask, STR cask, and red wine casks. But again, the blend. This is the only apex that we don't just focus on one type of cask, and this is just the region. So it's a kind of terroir project inside that. Probably next year we're going to launch Sea of Galilee and Jerusalem. So we're going to have like 3 of those, and we'll see. With the desert ones, they're going to take some time. But I think this is the viscosity here. Again, a lot of wood contact because of the air pressure, and there's some spiciness. And of course, it's a thick whiskey. We call it an explosive whiskey. I think the first time we launched it was 2 years ago with in Whiskey Show London and Whiskey Like Paris. I can say Dead Sea in 3-4 languages now. And in London, one of the guys from Glenfiddich, Mark Thompson, which is I think is like the global communicator, he said, there's 2 things I got from the whiskey show. It was a 40-year-old Glenn Farclas and this 3-year-old stupid thing that Tal Chotiner did. So I don't know. We probably did something good with that, but not very cost effective with those angels there. Cheers.
Yeah, it's so cool and so interesting, and I always get this like nuttiness from it, like almost like a Brazil nut fattiness. Rob says it's Guinness-esque. Cam says the angels bless this, so they deserve their share. I think 40% is taking a bit. It's a bit greedy, but
it's like rent. It's like the rent in Tel Aviv.
Yeah, and we're sure that's angel share, not people, you know, in the hotel snaffling it from the car.
Some of the casks we have a distiller's share as well. We had 2 sherry butts from the Czech, and we aged, and one of them was almost empty here in Tel Aviv because we kept on tasting it just to see if it's okay. We almost killed it.
Yeah, I can imagine it. Do you ever get like I've never been to the Dead Sea, but I know like when you get like a lot of really quite mineralic water sources, you get things crusted with like salt and whatnot. Do you find that the barrels crust over?
No, not crust over, but there is something there. I don't think it's the salt. I think there's so many other minerals there that you can actually feel the brom or whatever. And it's so the casks are, I told you, they're like starting to, you feel that the upper staves are like starting to break just because of the pressure. So nothing really leaves there. This is the way you call it the Dead Sea, because no organism can actually leave there, and probably only the angels and the whiskey.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shocker they even put a hotel out there. It would be so unique. But yeah, I think I don't know if Ollie's got it, but I think there's a photo of the barrels like in a cage on top of the hotel, and I think the roof nearly collapsed in as well because there were maybe a few too many barrels in there.
When we took it, first of all, just think about how you get the cask on the roof. We're actually rolling it on the carpets, you know, the hotels have the carpets on the upper floor, and people are just like, you know, going out of the room just to see what's the rockets, because it's heavy, you know. It's just think about a 300-liter cask, and just an empty cask is almost like 100 kilos. So just think about the whole thing. And when we took it down, and you need to kind of turn it, and it was rocking the whole hotel. And we said, okay, it's very good that we're just leaving now before anything will happen. It's not a very new hotel. What is this single cask that you have there, Barry?
Barry's got some. Barry's clearly got some single cask special, you know. releases and
I'd say it's
whatnot.
from the cage. This is from the distillery because this is the leftovers of the single cask. It's been sold here in the cage at the
Oh.
business center. Yeah.
So you got something kind of similar to like the Cadenheads Springbank cages and whatnot, just some fun bottles
Something
and
like that.
samplers.
Something like that.
Fair enough.
Some reviews about that sea because I couldn't read that. But
Yeah. So Rob reckons you can make a whiskey syrup for ice cream with this. Yeah, people are loving it. Troy's wondering if how Mizunara casks would fare there. I know that Mizunara wood's a lot more temperamental than a lot of oak types. So you might not even be able to get a cask up there before it starts falling apart.
and it's like it soaks a lot of liquid inside. We have enough Angel Share. Mizunara is like sometimes like a sponge. And it's so expensive at the moment, though. We didn't bring any Mizunara.
Yeah, fair enough. David's wondering what the insurance premiums and insurance claims for whiskey falling through a roof would look like. And so how many do you know, are you doing a lot more Dead Sea casks, or do you think this will be it?
Oh no, it's so we did either 3 or 4 batches from the Dead Sea, I think 3. And we are always going to make some more. So it's we have a different warehouse now, which is bigger, on the ground, not on the roof. And it's so we're gonna have a lot of whiskeys from there. It's always gonna stay in small batch because not very cost effective to make it as a single as a core range. But it's, as I said, this one and the Pomegranate are going to be consistent, not by the flavors or characteristics, but going to be consistent releases in very small batches. So this was, I think, 4,000 bottles or something like that. The one you have, and I have another one here, which is a little bit bigger. But we have the cask there. It's just no one wants to go there during summertime to take samples. So sometimes it's almost over mature during the summer because it's really hell on earth. It's 50 degrees there, and you don't want to go there. The only place we like to visit is on the way back. There's a very nice bar in the middle of the desert. They have a best Guinness, and some beautiful IPAs. So it's the reason to go to the Dead Sea is we can stop for a beer on the way back.
I love that. Yeah, I know in Australia we've got, over a certain temperature, a lot of tradies stop working like over 35 degrees. I think when it hits 50 degrees, it's like, nope, go nowhere near there. Not interested, not happening. Well, I might launch the poll as well to see what everybody's favorite of the night is. So Tal, you, me, and David can see people voting. It's like the most exciting horse race ever. And you can vote for your top 2, I believe. But we'll announce at the end once more people have voted. Troy's been in Alice Springs working at 52 degrees before. I melt into a puddle at like 40. I'm like, I'm done. Put me in an ice bath like an old lady, Troy is wondering if you do warehouse tours and tastings.
Oh yeah. Well, here in Tel Aviv, yes. In Tel Aviv, we have around 2,000 casks. There's another warehouse just 30 minutes from here that it's just like a warehouse. It's not really for tours. So there's a visitor center here. We have tours, we have tastings. And the good thing that we don't have regulations in Israel, so there's no bonded warehouse. We can actually open every cask and taste it with you guys. So if you come over and we have enough time, not in summertime, we can even actually go to the Dead Sea as well. So yeah, we do that. You're welcome. You're welcome to come.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I think, David, surely, Whiskey Live Tel Aviv needs Australian whiskey people there and pouring, and we can definitely put that on the list.
Well, we've got a year to plan. It's just been last week. So, yep, we'll have to mobilize the troops.
Yep, absolutely. And see for ourselves. It's a research and an educational trip. All right. Well, we've almost everybody has voted. If you haven't voted yet, get your last votes in. Leo worked outdoors in Dubai in 50+ degrees. Oh no, 20 minutes on, 40 minutes off. Oh, I cannot begin to fathom that. I'm from California. It's always temperate in California. It's never too hot, never too cold, except for climate change. Now there's bushfires, but yeah, no, I can't fathom it. But I'll make the trek for you, Tal. All right. Well, I think I will end the poll and share the results. We have a clear winner. Very, very clear winner. The Dead Sea Cask is absolutely the pick. It is such an unusual, it's just so unique and so unusual and unlike any whiskey. But at the same time, it's like one of the best whiskeys.
And I think that, well, I like it that you like the core range. I love that when you see it's almost like the same. Of course, Classic is the opening one, and of course, all the rest of them will be different. And Classic is always, as we said, it's a drink you can have with an evening news. But I love that the fact that almost most of the elements had the same rate, or just sherry more, of course. But this is why you make different whiskeys, because everyone can relate to a different kind of whiskey. And of course, with the small editions, small batches, it's always different. You have to understand that we are really proud of our lack of patience and all the craziness of pomegranate wine cask and all of those. For an example, we did this is cognac cask, this is orange wine cask. We had this is Chateau Mouton Rothschild cask from Bordeaux, and we have Grappa cask, we have Pinot de Charan cask, we have Amarone, we have Ricciotto, we have, I think, the beautiful one I tasted yesterday, that we are the first one to age whiskey in ex-American single malt cask. Everyone's using ex-bourbon. We are using Westward, and they are using our cask. So we actually switched cask now with Westward from Portland, Oregon, which amazing distillery as well. We don't say no to any cask. If it's not going to be okay, there's a lot of guys here, we're going to drink it. But we keep on trying to launch the good stuff for you. If not, you have to come here and taste some stuff that we decided are not good enough. Just we're going to have another drink, and that's it. So thank you, guys. It was awesome.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us tonight and for experiencing and tucking into these whiskeys with us. I think this is the second M&H Distillery tasting I've done with you, Tal, and it's just always so exciting to see people like getting into a whiskey that you just never see anything like that, and it's so unique in its profile. And I believe David shared the link, but I'll share it again as well. I think we've got a discount on some of the milk and honey whiskeys tonight for everyone in the tasting. Obviously no sherry. Sorry. But it's coming. It's coming. There's always a ship with sherry coming to Australia. So, but yeah, thank you, Tal, so much for joining us. I'm sure you've got to get to your work day now because it's early morning, afternoon for you. And for everybody else, thank you so much. Have a great evening. We'll see you at the next one. Tal, if you wanted to hang around for a chat with David and I and debrief. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Bye, man.
The discounts are already loaded into the prices in that link that Emma and I have shared. You don't need any codes, and other than the sherry, everything is still available. Not unlimited, but certainly there's some stocks left. So enjoy your M&H's, and we'll see you at the next event.
Yeah, see you soon.